everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Inc. This is a very special episode because I will actually be interviewing one of our team members, Miss Emily Ratcliffe. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me, Allie. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so this episode is one that I know a lot of people in the audience really need to hear. And we're going to be talking about high ticket sales. So, Emily is an amazing salesperson. She is an amazing sales coach and sales trainer. And she's really going to be able to give you guys some actionable tips that you can implement into your business to help your salespeople improve their closing ratios, hopefully cause fewer leads to slip through the cracks. But we will just kind of see where the conversation goes, but I know that you're going to love it. So before we dive in, Emily, why don't you give us a quick introduction into who you are, what you do, and what you are most excited to talk about today?
Absolutely. So thank you so much again for having me, Ali. I've been excited to jump on and have a chat about this because it is a subject close to my heart. So first off, a bit of a background about me. So as you kind of mentioned, I am in sales, but I'm also got a bit of a marketing background as well. So I have been a marketing director for 2 years now for a big property company. We teach high ticket sales for property education. So we do coaching all the way from £15,000 all the way up to £45,000. So I've been on the front end of kind of marketing and directing it out there, also on the end of closing and doing that side of things for sales as well. But throughout the whole of my career, I have had sales background. It is in my blood, and I always end up back in sales because I love it. So the biggest thing that I'm excited to talk to you guys about is actually pain points and how do you kind of prescription sell. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to talking about, how people can use prescription selling to aid their sales team.
Yeah, I think that that is so important. And kind of like you, I feel like a lot of people in marketing, they are lacking in the department of sales and kind of the experience to understand that marketing is not isolated from the rest of your business. The quality of your marketing could be amazing, but if the sales process and the sales scripting and messaging and the sales team is not working very well, then everything that you've been spending on your marketing or all of that kind of goodwill that you've built up through your marketing can be lost very, very quickly. And I've seen far too often businesses that blame their lack of return on investment on marketing issues when in fact it's really coming from problems in their sales department. So I was very, very fortunate to get connected with Emily and that we were able to start working together. It's been an amazing experience. Really excited to also hopefully have her coming on board for sales coaching with our new mastermind program. So stay tuned for details on that coming soon. But Emily, why don't you first give us a little bit more background on what prescription selling actually is and how you would best implement this either in a one-on-one sales meeting or on a sales call?
Of course. Great place to start. So one of the things I suppose is probably best for me to start off with is why people get this wrong. So a lot of people can kind of handle leads as they're there, they're ready to purchase, and that's it. They know about the product, happy days. And it's easy to take kind of rejection from a sale personally. And part of it is to understand that yes, your product can solve a problem for somebody, but it's how do you understand whether they know that it can solve the problem. And it's easy to skip those steps. So prescription selling is how do you kind of sell like a doctor as such. So you need to go from what is the customer looking for? Let them tell you your problems. And then you need to be able to kind of understand that, fundamentally understand each individual problem in isolation, and also relate what your product can solve in accordance to each of those problems. And from there, you're gaining trust, you're gaining rapport, you're gaining kind of authority in the conversation as well, to be able to make sure that that customer feels so confident that your product's going to be able to kind of take on board their problems, turn them around and solve them. Then price is just not a question from there. You've been able to kind of give them something that's going to be an all-rounded solution. And if there's something in there that you don't think the product solves, it gives you the opportunity in that conversation to talk around maybe different things that you could bolt on.
Yeah, that was a great description. And ultimately, I think a lot of people in sales, they really fail in the rapport building aspect of the calls. And part of it, I think, is because they're kind of going through it almost robotically, not actually taking in the information that's being given to them and responding appropriately. So it reminds me of the movie Hitch, where he's like, listen and respond. You can't have these preconceived sentences or scripts in your head and just use them when they're not appropriate. And you really, truly need to respond in a way that shows them that you have been listening to what they've been saying. And exactly like you said, when you do this properly, all of that comes together for the best case scenario in prescription selling. And so it really kind of checks off some of the boxes that all salespeople should be checking off regardless. But what I've seen, and I'm sure what you've seen, is that a lot of times people are so rigidly focused on what the package is or the features, not necessarily the benefits, or what does that benefit actually mean to you and your business? So if you were going to start prescription selling to someone, what are some of those questions that you would first ask them?
Great question. I think you've pinpointed something there that I want to touch on. So in terms of pain points as well. So part of the thing in prescription selling is people will give you the high level. So what they're going to say is, let's say that their problem at the minute is they've not got enough leads through. Okay, that's great. We've highlighted one problem, but what does that cause for them? There's always 3 layers to this. So it's then going to be a financial thing. So not enough leads is a problem in itself, but then that means there's not enough money coming into the business. And what does that mean for the business? Oh, okay, well, that means that I'm stressed, or I've got my wife screaming at me, or I've got team members that I can't pay. That's when we get to the real pain. So in terms of the questions that you'd always start to ask off is, I always introduce myself first. That means that they are super, super comfortable. They know who I am and they know how I can help. So really, really high level, run over my credentials. Why can I help them in their situation? Then it's just a free for all. Stick it back to the customer. What did they want to get out of it? So I always start, in our scenario, we're looking at marketing, we're looking at sales. What is it that they're doing for their business currently? What does the business do? And what are they trying to achieve? So in that sense, they then start to reel off, what does the business do? And that key there is, what are you trying to achieve? That way, rather than saying, what is it that you are achieving? What do you do well? That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in, what are they wanting to try and do that they've not hit? And that word trying is so important. So I always put it in as, what are we trying to achieve in the business? That way they're going to cover all of that. From there, that is the most important 10 minutes of that call. Is every single thing that customer's going through right then is their pain points. And I always have a notepad next to me, a pen, and I blast through everything that they come back with is a pain point in there that you need to address. And the key thing with taking notes down with that is word for word. What we don't want to be doing is, if somebody says that they're struggling to scale, we don't want to say they're struggling to make money. It's not the same thing. We need to be able to kind of reflect exactly the terms they're using. So that's the key kind of starting off point of starting to diagnose what their problems are.
Yeah. And I think you also said something very important, and we actually do this in ad copy as well. And that's making sure that you are digging to the heart of the problem, because like you said, these surface level problems, you can hear that and you hear those phrases and those terms all of the time. And so you don't even necessarily really let the gravity of that sink in. And more often than not, people are not proud of the things that they're struggling with in their business. So they may not really elaborate on those. And so you do a great job of going back and really digging in to each one of them and asking them probing questions that will get them to open up to you. And I think that, what this does throughout this entire portion of the call or the meeting or consultation is it does transition the way that they see you from a salesperson who is simply trying to sell them something to a consultant that is truly trying to help them. People can sense very easily when someone is not really interested in the details of what they're saying or what they're doing, and then trying to come up with actual solutions for it instead of just, oh, yes, yes, okay, I understand. All right, here's what we can offer you. And so I think that the way that people are perceived and kind of the power struggle, in a way, if you want to call it that, of the sales process is crucial. And it kind of goes back to what we talk about a lot in marketing, which is using education to position yourself as an expert in the space, as an authority where you are educating them, you are trying to help them, you are not trying to sell to them. And they're going to be a lot more comfortable with you at that point, and you will absolutely set yourself apart from other salespeople. So once you've gone through that portion where you're really digging into their pain points, you are further probing them to understand the true gravity of the problems they're experiencing, what is the next typical phase for your sales calls or consultations?
Great question. So in terms of kind of something that you touched on there that I want to touch back with is you mentioned about kind of making sure that you're the right fit as well. So one of the things that I tend to cover at this kind of early stage of things is I set up that this isn't for everybody. So we look to see, so the way that I'll introduce myself is that I am a success manager. And what I'm going to do is listen to their problems. What are they trying to achieve? What are the solutions? And see whether we can help them. Now that's so key, because at the end, when you go to prescribe, if you use it in kind of a medical term, one medicine isn't going to fix everything. And people need to feel at the end of this call that what you've prescribed them, and it's the same, we have different courses, different paths, and I will never prescribe a product that's wrong for somebody, because at the end of the day, we want a testimonial. We want a customer who's happy, who's going to go and promote the course, the product, whatever you're selling. So it's kind of injustice if you don't sell them the right journey. So by the end of that call, they already have trust that you've prescribed them the right kind of key. So from there, after the customer has kind of gone through everything that they're wanting, there's a very, very important switch here that you then need to make them feel, first of all, individual. Their problems are their own problems. And as a business owner, your problem's more important than absolutely everybody's, which is totally accurate. But you also don't want to feel stupid. You don't want to feel embarrassed. You don't want those feelings. So it's really important to let that person sit themselves on a sliding scale. So one of the things that I'll always do is say, first of all, you're not on your own. So your problems are totally, totally independent to you. So we always cover that, but we'll talk about, we've got customers from zero income who are just starting up their business, all the way to customers who are 15, 20 mil turnover. That means I don't need to know where they sit on that sliding scale, but in their head, they go, oh, perfect, I'm not too far away from these people, I'm not too far away from those people, which then builds that or pulls that wall down actually from them feeling insecure and being able to feel more comfortable about talking to me. So that's really important from there. Then we go into kind of the solutions. So it's important to know for salespeople and for also business owners giving this job to a salesperson, the technical element isn't particularly important. And a place that people go really, really wrong here is giving too much away. And one of the worst things that you can do is give everybody all of the answers on a sales call or a consultation that they think, great, well, I'll go and implement all of that and I'll come back in 6 months and I'll see where I'm at to, which is just a big no-no. Yeah. So it's important to talk about the what, not the how. So in this kind of transition, what I'm going to do is revisit, usually in a slightly different order to the order they gave it to me in, but their pain points we need to touch on each individual one. And I'm just going to prescribe what solutions that I would suggest for it. And I always touch back on, once you go through to the course, once we go through to the training, this might shift, because it's important that we then go and put the training as an authority for getting the bang on right answer. So I can give them all the ideas and what we might think is going to help, but until they actually get the product, that's when things happen. So that kind of transition from listening to diagnosing is really, really important.
Yeah. And I think that what you said about business owners giving too much away, it is absolutely true. So this is something that I did pretty early on after starting my business when I was doing all my sales calls. And while I did have a pretty strong closing percentage, I know that I missed out on a lot of sales because that was something I was so passionate about. That's what I was used to doing, listening to people's problems and diagnosing them, but really giving them the prescription itself right there. And those would often take my calls over the allotted time frame that I truly wanted them to be in. But exactly like you said, people think, oh, wow, that's great information. I'm going to go ahead and try it. Maybe I succeed, maybe I fail, but I'll at least try it first. And so that was something that I had to very quickly recognize. But I've also seen it for a lot of different industries. There are some where people are simply not really capable of doing it on their own. But at the same time, they're already seeking you out because they don't want to do it on their own or they can't. And so you don't have to feel like you are giving them all of the answers right there on that call. So another thing that you mentioned that I think is really important is people do want to feel that you have helped others similar to them, whether it is their industry, whether it is their kind of point of revenue that they're bringing in currently. So even though so many businesses, we've really realized over the years, it doesn't actually matter that much, in terms of their industry or the amount of revenue. It really comes down to those problems and how you're able to solve them. People do really truly believe that their business is somehow super unique and that not every product or offer or solution is going to work for a business like theirs. Even something as simple as Facebook ads. There's a lot of people who say Facebook ads don't work for a business like mine. Well, there are so many variables that go into that. It actually has nothing to do with your business. But like you said, empathizing with them and also showing them you're not unique in terms of the people that we've been able to help before, and kind of increase that comfort level that they're not going to be sticking out like a sore thumb, if you want to call it that. So, okay, great. We've already gone through this rapport building, this understanding of the pain points. We've switched over into really digging into those pain points and diagnosing the appropriate solution to solve those problems. Where do you go from here?
Yeah. So one of the things that can kind of help before the diagnosing problem. So depending on the front end of the call, and I always kind of, even you guys are all going to be so familiar with funnels, and I always call this, the sales call is a funnel in itself. So what you can do is in the beginning, when they're kind of telling you their problems, telling you what you want, you should be able to gauge their level of knowledge. If you can't, one of the easiest things to ask before you get to the diagnosis stage is to ask them, what do they want? So if through their problems and if through you kind of talking in that front end, you still go, I don't know what this person wants, ask them. That way they're going to just tell you exactly what they want from you, from the product and the solutions that you want to offer. So sometimes I've had it in the past when I was first starting out in sales, I just totally assume someone's level of knowledge, start talking to them in detail about something that they think's really, really basic, and they've lost interest because they think they're 10 times ahead, or vice versa. Somebody's never run a Facebook ad in their life, and I'm in there talking about retargeting and target audiences and stuff, and they go, holy hell, I don't know what's going on. So it's really important to kind of ask that level of things. So once you are doing the diagnosis, it's important, especially with marketing, to look at a few different aspects. So the key is we need to look at sales system, we need to look at front end marketing, and we need to look at positioning. And those are three things that are really, really important to talk through in that diagnosis, because what you'll find is with some companies, they believe, and it may also be the case, that their sales process is perfect and they don't want you to touch it. In that case, do not talk about it, because you could quite easily cause offense. Same with if they think that their Facebook ads are amazing, that's fine. Let's go help them. And when they start to understand that actually there might be slightly different ways around doing something, we can go and help them at that point. So in that call, it's important to just kind of help with what they see as kind of pressing, and any ideas that we can pinpoint as well. So I always run through a couple of different question asking, and a huge part of this is that question and response. So I'll be asking them, what size is their team? Do they have a team? What do they actually want out of it? Do they want to be in the driving seat of their marketing, or do they want it to be totally hands off? Because I don't want to go and prescribe that we're going to show them to do everything, when actually they want somebody to just take it off them. So a lot of it is that to and from, questions, answers, so that you can just totally give them the perfect response. So only when Only when they start to stop asking questions to you is when I start to kind of introduce the price, and we start pitching things in terms of how does the product then look, because they're already sold on the solution. And one of the key kind of tips I want to give at this point is, do not be afraid of silence. And it's something that people fall into in that diagnosis through to sales pattern. People freak out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always kind of explain it as a first kiss. It sounds so ridiculous, but when you're kind of dating somebody new and you get excited and you've been flirting and you're enjoying yourself and you start to think, oh, I'm going to kiss this person right now. You think you've got that kind of awkward silence between then. Do not freak out. Be comfortable with it. The person who speaks first is falling into it. Let the customer be the person to go and break that silence. And I mean, I've had times where people will go, are you still there? And I'm going, oh, yes, I am. Yeah. But usually 9 times out of 10, that's when you get the closing question. The person's ready. They want to know the price. They want to know the next steps. Whenever you get silence, it's a good thing, because that customer is then going ahead and making a decision in their head. And in that call, it's easy to fill the silence, but you need to let them make those decisions and process it whilst you're live.
Yeah, I think that is an amazing tip. So I learned this several years back. I was doing a sales training, and it is especially for women. I think women struggle with this a little bit more, feeling the need to fill that silence. But the truth is, if you've been having an ongoing dialogue, someone's asking a question, someone's answering, if you feel that they either have given you all the information you need, if you feel like they are a good fit, it's really up to them what happens next. So they could be saying, hey, I really appreciate all the information. I don't think that this is a good fit for me. So if that's the case, they're just going to say it, or you're going to actually kind of giving them the opening to be able to say it. And if they are genuinely interested, exactly like you said, they are going to ask about price or payment terms or the length of time that things like this take, really more detailed questions about that solution. That's going to give you so much information in terms of understanding how serious they are. And then being able to give them things that they are already asking for. So I do think it kind of goes back to that power balance in terms of you are not pushing something on them. If you've done a good job up until that point, they should be excited to learn those more fine details of what it is that you're offering them, but it can feel a little bit uncomfortable. So this is why I love doing Zoom calls, because I like to be able to see somebody. I like to be able to see their body language and their facial expressions and things like that. And it's a little bit easier to kind of gauge, I think, what's going on with somebody when you are more face-to-face. It can be a tad nerve-wracking if you're on the phone and you don't know if somebody is still there on the other end necessarily. But exactly like you said, you have to hold off, let their next thought or next question be the thing that you hear. And ultimately, at the same time, you may have heard things from them that give you an idea that they may not be the right fit. So if that was something that you heard, at what point would you address that, or how would you go about addressing that?
Okay, brilliant. So there's 2 things you touched on there. So one was objections, which I want to jump into. But in terms of if somebody's not a right fit, there is nothing wrong with that. One of the things that we need to kind of safeguard as businesses is the culture that we have inside the company. And that comes from clients all the way through to the team, everything. So if you kind of force sell somebody in, or if we come across a client who's got loads and loads of money to invest and the price isn't a problem, but we know that they're going to be the most difficult client ever, we don't want to work with customers like that. And it's important as a business to kind of have those thresholds to understand. And sometimes also it's not the best fit for somebody. So we've had times where we've had customers who really, really need our help, but don't have the kind of investment for our higher level products. That's fine. The best thing I can do is serve that customer with either some free resources or something to help them get moving. So by the time they come back around, they've got a good relationship with us. We've helped them out and they know that they can come to us for help. And that's the best way to run business. So what I'd always do is a way to kind of, if you're ever nervous, is I ask them for permission to be honest with them. And this is something that's great for objection handling. So literally the one sentence is, can I just be honest with you for a couple of seconds, from business owner to business owner? Do you mind if I give you my personal opinion? with saying personal opinion immediately, it's no longer about the business, it's about you and them. Absolutely, they're happy for you to take to offer your opinion from there. What I then do is just say, look, if I was in your shoes, I'd go ahead, I'd go away, go and have a look at this. Start with that, give it 3 months. Here's my action plan. Give me a call back. You've got my number, you've got my email address, come get me. And that could be from anybody who's got a multi-million pound business if it's not the right fit, all the way to somebody who's just getting started. Then you're not kind of cutting it off, then going, no, go away, I'm not interested, and hanging up the call, but you're giving them the opportunity to kind of come back and swing around from there. So that's the way I always handle things. If it's not quite the right fit, always give them a pass, so you've still diagnosed the right solution for them, but it's just they're not quite the right fit then.
Yeah. And I have seen this specific type of scenario really cost people a lot of business over time, because too often business owners, they think that qualified lead means something totally different than what it actually means.
Yeah.
So to me, a qualified lead is someone who needs the help that you provide and is interested in learning about those solutions. Not everybody within all those finer details is going to be the perfect fit at any given time, but you do not want that person to feel less than if you say, hey, you're not there yet. You don't make enough to work with us. Those types of things are horrible, because everyone that we deal with, especially, but really anybody in any industry, especially if it's something higher ticket, just because they either don't have the funds or maybe the infrastructure or whatever it is in place for them to be a great fit to get started at that time, that could very easily change. I mean, the home improvement and the remodeling industry was something I worked in for a long time. And it really frustrated me a lot when salespeople would just assume that if someone doesn't have the budget right then, that they would just tell them, hey, we're too expensive for you or something like that. And that person is never coming back to you. People can save money. People can find creative financing options. There's a lot of different options for people if they really want what it is you have. They will often find a way to pay for it. So you never want to really leave anyone feeling bad after your call, even if they're not the right fit. And then a lot of times, if you do know that it's not a financial thing, it's not necessarily a point they're going to get to, it's just not something that you're used to helping people with, or that you don't feel confident about helping them with, refer them out to someone else, and they could still send other people to your business that maybe are a good fit. And so just really never burning those bridges. So I think what you said is perfect in terms of you really being honest with them, coming from a place of always trying to serve and help, and not a place of trying to sell. I mean, you're spending that time still giving someone the right diagnosis and the right next steps, even if it's not going to bring in any revenue to the business. And like you mentioned, we've got a lot of free resources. So there are people that can take those resources and make the necessary changes to get to the level in which it is then a good fit to work with us. So I just think it's a great idea not to write your leads off too soon, because something you and I have talked about, we've had people that have invested in the mentorship, for example, that are pre-revenue. And if you look at them on paper, what's your revenue from your business? $0. There are a lot of business owners that would just cut that out completely and never really take the time to have that call. But the truth is, in at least an industry like ours, the whole goal is to increase revenue. And there are a lot of people who are willing to do whatever it takes to get the funding that they need for something they know will help them long term. So when it comes down to, okay, this person is a good fit, they've kind of broken that silence and they've said, okay, so what does the pricing look like? Tell me how you would take it from there.
Great question. So I want to touch on objections as well. So I'll touch on objections, then I'll kind of move on to kind of the close. So with objections, they are a gift. And I love objections because it keeps you on your toes as a salesperson. You need to kind of learn to duck and dive and help and handle, but it also lets you know what they're nervous about. And every single objection has a meaning behind it. So for example, they need to go away and talk about it. Well, chances are, if you've kind of got your funnel working properly, they should be the decision maker. So really, they don't. But it's also important to know that when somebody genuinely has to go away, please don't put pressure on them at that point. If you know that they have to go and get it through a PO approval process or whatever, go and let them do that. Don't freak them out. But sometimes I'll also use the same question in terms of if I want to give them something advice wise, honestly, I just say, can I be honest with you after the objection? And they go, yeah, okay. And for example, let's say somebody needs to go away and run the numbers. I'll say, usually when somebody says that to me, it means that I've not served them properly enough. I've not given them the information that they need to be able to make a decision. What is it that you still need to ask me? Cards on the table, be totally honest with me. What have I not served you with enough to be able to give you the answers?
Mm-hmm.
That then makes them feel, and it's using words like honestly, cards on the table, phrases like that. It just makes them feel so comfortable to tell you everything. And you'd be surprised the things that people tell me on sales calls, because they feel comfortable and they feel safe. They'll just give you the answer. So for example, I had a call recently where the guy said, look, I'm really nervous because I'm mega busy. He said, I know it's going to work, but I'm getting screamed at by my wife because I'm not home till 9 p.m. at night because I'm running this business. I know I need to get my time out, but I'm in a vicious circle because I'm working all the hours trying to implement the marketing and I don't have the brain space to do it. Hallelujah. He gave me the answer to the sales close of, great. Okay. Well, have you ever used a virtual assistant? No. Okay. Well, do you have $600 a spare a month? Yeah, of course I do. Right. Well, come on board. Let's get you a VA sorted. Let's get it off your hands. All you need to do is the strategy, get them to implement it. Oh my God. So there was a solution there that I could kind of offer him to fix that he'd not thought about. And what he'd have done was go away, tell his already angry wife that he needed to go and spend money on the coaching. She'd have screamed and then they'd never come back. So it's about being honest and kind of asking them, really, they've given you an objection, but what's the truth behind it? And also owning up to that. I've not served you properly yet. Let me help you more is just so, so important. So that's what I do in terms of objection handling, and it works every time.
Yeah. So, that I need to go talk to my partner, I need to go talk to my spouse, or any of those types of objections. I know that those are very common for a lot of people. And as you mentioned, we do ask people if they're the primary decision maker. We get them to confirm that that's the person that's going to be on the call. However, sometimes people will say that and they will agree to it. And then when push comes to shove, maybe they are the primary decision maker, but they have a partner that they feel like it's a good idea to talk to them about it, or somebody that's maybe not even necessarily involved in their business. So I know that we've had several conversations about kind of I'll say the psychology of what is happening when someone feels that way, or like that they need to get permission from someone that they don't actually, in fact, need to get permission from. And I know that's something that a lot of business owners deal with. So what is a great way or a great question to kind of start overcoming that specific objection?
Perfect. So what I tend to do with something like this is, it depends what you do in your business, but something that always works is I offer kind of a guarantee with it. So if, for example, we're on that call, I know that person's on the line, I say, look, let's get you signed up. If you go away in the next 24 hours, you speak to your partner, I can even send them the Zoom recording. I can send them details. If they go speak to their partner and they go absolutely mental and they're not happy and they want a refund for it, that's fine. We're not going to hold you to it. We're not going to handcuff you with it. That makes them feel like they've got this space to go and think about it. They can take whatever offers on the table. They've made the decision, then they can go away. 9 times out of 10, that's a solution solver. Other than that, sometimes you can be quite cheeky with it. So I've sat on the call for 10 minutes whilst they've gone off and physically got their partner in the office, in the house, wherever they are, and sat them on the call with me. So one of the questions is, okay, great. Are they here? Let's go and let them bash out some questions with me. Let's go and speak about that. If they're really, really super insistent, I book in a date there and then for the next call where we can get both of the partners on there so we can have a conversation as a team. And I always say, as the 3 of us, so you can bash out any questions, ask me whatever you've got to, and we go from there. But part of it is probably genuine fear that they're going to get an earful from their partner for kind of spending out a big sum of money. So just having that kind of guarantee that if they sign up and the world ends and they change their mind, it's okay. I'm not going to hold you to ransom. So that's something that always helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said before, objections are a wonderful thing, but people do genuinely get very anxious about them. But the truth is, an objection is them giving you the thing that they have not found that solution for yet. And honestly, there are so many different ways that we can overcome things like that. For example, you've put together custom packages right there on the phone with somebody because their objections are valid and it may not be a perfect fit for a specific thing. So guess what? Instead of just not discussing it or not hearing those objections and them going off because they think that what we're talking about is the only thing we can do, you're able to come up with something that is custom to their unique solution. For example, one of the people that we signed up not long ago, he was already in 2 different coaching programs. He was very excited to work with us, but did not feel like this was one more program that he could actively go through. So you were able to get him a package of one-on-one consulting calls with me. Then it comes to find out that through those consulting calls, we've identified some serious technical challenges he would have been getting into, some things that will make his process easier, simpler, more affordable, more effective. And then we were able to get him into a custom build package for that specific thing. So this was somebody who originally thought that coaching was the thing that would have worked best for them. And while I absolutely think that they could have implemented this on their own, they wanted to save the time and go ahead and get it set up, but they didn't even necessarily know about the things that they were going to realize through those calls, because until you do have all of that information on the table in terms of the back end and their processes and their tools and what they're kind of headed towards, sometimes there's no real way to be able to get them there. So I think of this kind of like a bridge option where you're getting them to that next phase where they can either get a lot more information that's very specific and unique to them so that either they can take that, implement, then come back for a different thing when they're ready, or they will realize through that process that, hey, there is something else that I really want you guys to help me with. And this has been an awesome client so far, been great to work with him. And if you had not been able to put together that custom solution for him, we likely would not be working together today. So I think that, that's just critical to embrace those objections, because that's somebody being honest with you. And I would much rather people be overly honest with me than to hold back what they're thinking or what they're concerned about. And again, just, I guess, asking those probing questions. But finally, this is something that you actually touched on earlier, allowing themselves to share what it is they specifically need. So there are times where maybe their biggest objection is cash flow and they don't want to invest a lot of their cash flow up front. Well, maybe your typical plan is an upfront payment. If they say, is this something that we can put on a payment plan? They're telling you what they need in order to move across the finish line. And obviously, if that's not something you're willing to do, that's up to you. But overall, we're more than happy to work with people when it comes to their specific challenges, understanding what those are so that you then know that if that's the only challenge you're dealing with right now in terms of moving forward, that's something we are happy to try and work out for you specifically. So when it comes to somebody who you've gone through those objections, you've given them the responses that help them either fully understand what it is we can do to overcome them, or what they, may need to do on their own to help overcome them. And they're asking that question. So what's the price, or what's the timeline? Where do you take it from there to actually get that person all the way there, signed on as a new client, a new customer, and somebody that's very excited to make this investment?
Okay, definitely. So this is something that loads and loads of people get wrong, and it's easy to get wrong because in this process, what a lot of people do is start selling the product, and you're talking about, these are all the benefits of, this is how many sessions we have, this is what coaching looks like, blah, 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 this is what happens with the product. They don't care. All they want to know is, does your product solve their solution? So this part of the call should be the smallest area, and you need to make it sound as simple. So it's so easy to start talking about. So for example, Allie, our course just offers so much. And if I kind of went through every single detail of there, they'd go away feeling kind of overwhelmed.
Yes.
What it's important to know is know the product inside out. And on that closing section of the call, what is it that that client wants out of that product in particular, and everything else is a benefit. So all we're going to do on that call is go ahead and offer these individual parts so that they know, okay, that ticks the boxes. I'm happy. I get my one-on-one time. I get my training. I get my templates. I get all of this stuff. Absolutely amazing. From there, we can then sprinkle on all of the extras and go, and in addition, which we've not even spoken about, is all of this stuff that you get as well. Holy moly, what a deal. So they're going to go jump at that. So in terms of that process, we just need to make it sound simple, easy. We're going to move forward with what they want. And from there, it's so important that you have a facility to be able to take payment on that call. Another thing, people will go away and they will send invoices and they'll go, yeah, no problem. Well, go buy through the website and do this. You've just lost them immediately. As soon as they're not with you, doubt creeps in, something happens, the cat turns up and wants its food, like people are just going to disappear off. And it's so important to make sure that you make the process simple and easy for them, and that you can help them take payment there and then, so you're not losing them. So that's what that section of that call looks like.
Yeah. And you are so absolutely right. I've seen this with high ticket sales. I've seen this with low ticket sales. And honestly, it either comes down to the business owner simply not providing the staff with the tools and the resources they need to be able to do this, or laziness on the part of the salesperson. So I was working with a client who, it was more of like a lower ticket recurring revenue type of service. However, he was asking for a lot of information upfront and payment information on the website without really having anybody speaking to these people. So they didn't, necessarily trust them at that point. And so they did have a call center or a group of people that would take calls to be able to help people who are either not comfortable doing it all online, or maybe they still had questions before they would do it, etc. I would listen in on those calls, and so often they would say, oh, you can just do that online. Here, go here. And just, I'm like, they're literally calling you because they don't want to do it online, or they can't, or they just don't feel comfortable because they've never worked with you before and they want to make sure this is a legit business that's going to do what they say they're going to do. And that was simple laziness. I mean, they literally had the ability to go ahead and take the payment. So it doesn't matter if it's a big payment or a small payment, because I went back and would track those people and they did not end up paying. And that was the
surprise.
I know, that was the entire point. Also, people just get busy and they're not thinking about you as the only thing that's going on in their lives or their business. So, really seize the moment that you're in and go ahead and get people to get started right then and there, unless there is something that is legitimately forcing them to be unable to do so. And I think with today's tools and technologies, there's really just no excuse. I mean, if you guys listen to my podcast, watch my videos, you would know about High Level. High Level allows you to take payments directly through the system now. So if you're not using anything currently, that's kind of a no-brainer. And then things like PayFunnels has been a great option for custom subscriptions, custom payments and prices. And it gives you a very easy link that you can either send to somebody through the Zoom chat. You could text it to somebody if you're on a call and you stay on with them while they do it, or you can just take the information yourself, plug it in, confirm that it's been successful, and go ahead and get that person moving right away. So I think that's absolutely critical. Is there anything else that you would advise people on improving their closes, or things that have helped you close additional people? Anything that you feel like would be a great tip for listeners to in the episode today?
So I'm going to give a couple of tips for people who have salespeople on board. So first of all, if you're a business owner and sales doesn't run in your blood, that is absolutely fine. It's not a skill that is kind of there for everybody. It can be trained, you can practice it, and it's important to get advice on how to create your script. So one of the things is you need to be able to understand what benefits does your product have, how to overcome the ums and ahs if you're not sure that it does that, how do you get that confidence there. But in terms of having salespeople to kind of do this for you, it's important you give them the tools to do it. And by that, it's important to address that salespeople are not administrators. And sometimes what kind of people can do is put on so much admin responsibility for salespeople. They get they get kind of distracted from things.
Mhm.
Salespeople are best used for getting that customer serve, getting them the right solution, and then from there it needs to go to the operations team, because what you're going to find is it will be sold absolutely amazingly, the customer's on top of the world, and suddenly they don't get their paperwork through, or they don't get this, and then it gets dropped, and then they suddenly go, hold on a minute, have I been sold a lie? So it's so important to get your automations in place to make it easy on the back end. So from that kind of close, they need to be congratulated, they need to feel excited, they need to have that confirmation, like you say, that that payment's gone through successfully, and to get all of the follow-up information. If a customer has had to chase you after the sales team is closed, you failed because you've not delivered the product from there. So it's so important to get those automations. And like you mentioned about high level, it's just incredible for doing all the automations on that back end. So yes, you are the queen of high level automation.
Hey,
So,
well, I'll tell you, I mean, if you've got great salespeople, you shouldn't want them doing a lot of administrative stuff, because every moment they're not taking calls and servicing the leads that you have, that's money that you're not bringing in. And so we have been able to do this with very little manual administrative work on the back end. I mean, it's as easy as adding a tag to that person and just sending them the right contract. And from there, everything is really going through. I mean, I have like an automated congratulations video email that goes out to them, welcoming them to the team. And so it is genuine. I'm very excited to speak with them, but I can't do that every single moment of the day. And so I at least know that they're getting something from me personally that shares how excited I am to work with them, and that I'm looking forward to whatever that next step is that they're actually going to be taking with the business. Because that's usually where I come in, is on that next call to really take it from there. So I think this has been so amazing. We could obviously do a lot of different angles on this type of episode. I'm sure I'll have you back soon. I would love to talk about the follow-up process and follow-up calls and people who are not a one call close type of opportunity, because I have seen very clearly that a lot of people struggle with that. They definitely struggle with just closing on the call in general. But then after that happens, let's say that you've gotten somebody who really was a good fit and you didn't end up selling them whatever was right for them. You don't just want to let that go. There are, additional opportunities to make that happen. I feel like there's a lot of fear and a lack of confidence sometimes that comes with circling back to former leads that maybe you didn't properly service or that you didn't really diagnose properly. So that would be a great follow-up to this episode.
definitely.
But Emily, I just want to thank you so much for being here. Like I mentioned before, Emily is going to be a part of the new mastermind group that will be coming soon. And she will be doing a lot of sales training and sales coaching for businesses just like yours. So thanks again for coming. And it's been awesome. I know we'll talk very soon.
Thanks for having me.